Hello. Most churches today teach us that the Sabbath, the seventh day, has been abolished or moved to Sunday. However, this teaching clearly contradicts the word of Elohim, because nowhere in the Holy Scriptures is such a change commanded. Rather, we see this. From creation to the new earth, the Sabbath remains the unchangeable sign of the covenant between Yehova and his people. Already at creation, Elohim blessed and sanctified the seventh day. In Genesis chapter 2, verses 2-3 it says, "And Elohim finished on the seventh day his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and sanctified it." The Sabbath is therefore not a Jewish tradition, but an order established from the beginning for all people. In the Ten Commandments Yehova confirms this order. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Exodus chapter 20, verses 8-11. And in Exodus chapter 31, verses 16-17 it says, "Therefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. It is an everlasting sign between me and the children of Israel." Yeshua the Messiah also kept the Sabbath. In Luke chapter 4, verse 16 we read, "And he came to Nazareth, and on the Sabbath he went into the synagogue according to his custom." Yeshua healed on the Sabbath and restored the original meaning of the day of rest by rejecting the human traditions of the Pharisees. But he never broke the Sabbath. Rather, he makes it clear that he himself is Lord of the Sabbath. Mark 2, verse 28. Not to abolish it, but to show its true purpose. Even after the resurrection, the apostles kept the Sabbath. In Acts 13, verses 42-44 we read that Paul preached on the Sabbath and almost the whole city gathered on the next Sabbath to hear the word of Elohim. And in Acts 18, verse 4 it says that Paul taught in the synagogue every Sabbath. There is not a single indication in Scripture that the disciples gave up the Sabbath or moved it to Sunday. So where does Sunday worship come from? Not from the Bible, but from human tradition. Emperor Constantine declared Sunday, the day of the sun, to be the official day of rest in the year 321 AD. All judges, city people, and craftsmen shall rest on the venerable day of the sun. This did not happen out of faithfulness to Yehova, but under the influence of pagan sun worship. The so-called church fathers supported this development. Ignatius of Antioch, around 110 AD, already spoke of the Lord's Day, and thereby laid a foundation for later Sunday observance. Justin Martyr, around 150 AD, wrote that Christians gathered on the day of the sun, because on that day light had been created and Yeshua had risen. And the Council of Laodicea in the year 364 AD explicitly forbade Christians to keep the Sabbath and required them to honor Sunday. Thus the truth of Yehova was betrayed and replaced by human tradition. The pagan church fathers and Emperor Constantine moved the biblical Sabbath to Sunday in order to separate Roman Christianity from the Jewish faith and adapt it to Roman culture. But the Sabbath has not only historical significance, but also prophetic significance. In Isaiah chapter 66, verses 22-23 it says that all nations in the new heaven and on the new earth will worship before Yehova on the Sabbath. Therefore, the Sabbath is not only past, but also future. It points to the coming rest in the Messiah, of which the book of Hebrews speaks. Hebrews chapter 4, verses 9-10. In summary, we see, the Sabbath was established at creation. It is part of the Ten Commandments. It is an everlasting sign of the covenant. Yeshua and the apostles kept it. It also applies in the future world. The Christian teaching that the Sabbath has been abolished or replaced is false and contradicts the Bible. For us today this means, we are called to honor and sanctify the Sabbath, not as a legal burden, but as a gift of Elohim to his people. Isaiah chapter 58, verses 13-14 promises blessing for all who honor the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a day of joy and a day of fellowship with Yehova. It is a sign that we belong to him. Yeshua himself says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 18, "Until heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or one little stroke shall pass from the law." Heaven and earth still exist, therefore the commandment of the Sabbath still exists. Therefore, if you truly want to live according to the teaching of Yeshua, then you cannot remain in the pagan traditions of the church which changed the word of Yehova and rejected the Sabbath. Leave false teachings, separate yourself from human traditions, and follow the true King Yeshua. Hold firmly to the pure and uncorrupted teaching of the Holy Scriptures.